Sometimes the most bitter betrayals aren't shouted. They're stirred slowly into a cup of coffee and served with a smile. My daughter-in-law, Sienna, took one sip of the cappuccino I'd carefully made, using the imported beans she insisted she loved, then set the cup down with a quiet, deliberate clink. "This tastes cheap, Mom," she said flatly, without meeting my eyes. The room fell silent. My son Ethan pretended to check a notification on his phone, his shoulders stiff. My granddaughter Mia let out a small giggle before stifling it with a cough. I stared at the cup. The foam was still intact, the cinnamon swirl I'd added from memory still dancing at the surface. I'd made this same coffee every Sunday morning for years, back when they still visited with warmth instead of obligation. Back when Mia would sit on my lap and beg for just one spoonful of the grown-up drink. Back when Sienna still called me Mom, without the sarcastic tilt. "You can say thank you," I replied, calm but steady. I didn't make it for a review. Sienna shrugged, pushing the delicate china saucer aside like it was a paper plate. "I just thought maybe this time you'd use something artisanal. Ethan and I brought you a bag of the brand we use. It's better for your gut." My gut. The same gut that had twisted for months, watching them slowly replace warmth with critique, appreciation with pity, and partnership with control. "I'll keep that in mind," I murmured. "Thanks." The real sting wasn't in her words. It was in the way she said them, like I was failing some unspoken standard. Like my presence was slowly becoming a blemish in the curated aesthetic of their lives. That same morning, after they'd left, I discovered a printed invoice tucked under a throw pillow. I wasn't snooping, I was picking up after them, as usual. It was from a high-end floral vendor. Peonies and orchids. Delivery for Ethan and Sienna's anniversary brunch. Scheduled to be hosted here. At my house. No one had asked me. I stared at the total, $3 for 80. And next to it, in neat cursive, a note from Sienna. "Use the joint account. Mom won't notice." My heart didn't sink. It slammed. A cold clarity washed over me, sharper than anger. Because I had noticed. And I wasn't going to ignore it this time. That night, I sat at the desk James and I had shared for 35 years, the oak polished by our hands and our history. The framed wedding photo beside my computer felt heavier than usual. We'd opened that joint account together. Originally meant for emergencies, shared vacations, and family support. After James passed, Ethan convinced me to keep it open for convenience, but somehow over the past 5 years, it had become more his than mine. Until now. I logged in. My breath caught. The balance was still substantial, but the activity log read like the ledger of someone who thought I wasn't watching. Designer coats. Spa retreats. Landscaping services I never approved. Home upgrades I didn't authorize. And 3 days earlier, a transfer, $10,000 to Sienna Wellness and Lifestyle LLC. I didn't even know she'd registered a business. Or maybe she hadn't told me because she thought I didn't matter anymore. I clicked over to another tab. My personal accounts. The ones only I had access to. Untouched. Intact. Thank God for my quiet instincts and that second financial advisor James had insisted we keep, just in case. Then I opened my safe. Inside. Our original banking documents. The deed to the house. James' notarized letter granting me sole control over all estate accounts, including the joint one. The irony? The joint account had never really been joint. It was mine. He'd known, even back then, what our son might become if comfort turned to entitlement. I took out the papers, laid them neatly across the desk, and wrote one sentence in the leather-bound notebook I kept for moments that demanded remembrance. The moment they served me insult with caffeine was the moment I decided to take back everything they thought they'd already taken. The next morning, Ethan showed up alone. No warning. No Sienna. "Hey, Mom," he said, stepping in with an overfamiliar ease. "Do you have the catering payment ready for Sunday?" "What catering?" "For the anniversary brunch," he said. "Sienna sent you the details, I think. Just use the joint account like usual. I'll email the invoice again." I studied him. This boy I'd raised. This man I barely recognized. "Ethan, I said gently. When was the last time you made a deposit into that account? He blinked. What? I asked when you last put money in. Because I checked this morning. I've been the only contributor for over 4 years. He shifted. That's not, Mom. We've been using it for shared things. You said. No. I cut in, calmly but firmly. You assumed. And I let you. That's on me. But the account isn't joint anymore. I've revoked access. As of today. He stared at me like I'd spoken another language. You can't do that. I can. I did. His mouth opened, then closed. Sienna's going to be furious. I imagine she will be, I said, turning toward the kitchen. Would you like some coffee? He didn't answer. Before we continue, take a moment to let me know where you're watching from in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe to more powerful stories like this one. By Thursday, word had spread. My phone pinged with a message from Sienna. What do you mean you revoked access? We had things planned, Eleanor. Real things. Important guests. Vendors. You can't just cut us off like that. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my window and let the early fall breeze into the house. It smelled of turning leaves and something else, freedom, maybe. Or finality. That same day, I received a call from Miriam Chin, a florist I'd known since James and I hosted our 25th anniversary party. Mrs. Lane, she began cautiously, I wanted to confirm the final floral order for Sunday. Sienna said you'd be handling payment. I sighed. Miriam, I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding. I never authorized that order. Please cancel it. A beat of silence. Then, are you sure? She was quite specific. And urgent. I'm sure. Miriam exhaled like she'd been holding it in for days. I'll cancel it immediately. And between us, Mrs. Lane, good for you. That afternoon, Thomas dropped by. Thomas was my other grandson, Sienna's stepson. Quiet. Observant. A graphic design major who never said much, but saw everything. He came bearing his usual offering, a half-eaten bag of kettle corn and a lopsided smile. You okay, Grandma? I raised an eyebrow. What makes you ask? Mom's been yelling for 2 straight days. Dad's walking around like he got hit by a truck. Pretty sure it has something to do with you. I smiled and took a kernel of popcorn. I suppose it does. He flopped onto the couch. I saw the florist van leave yesterday. Did you cancel the brunch?
No, Tomás.
I canceled my funding of it. If they still want to host it here, they're welcome to pay for it themselves. He let out a soft whistle. That'll go over great. I'm not trying to go over well, I said. I'm trying to go over honest. For the first time in years. He sat up, suddenly serious. I think that's brave, Grandma.
Brave.
A word I hadn't heard applied to me in decades. Thank you, I said softly. That means more than you know. Later that evening, I received a formal email from Sienna Lane Events, her LLC's signature. The tone was corporate, detached, almost ridiculous in its impersonality. Due to sudden withdrawal of financial support from our co-host and property owner, we are forced to revise our planned anniversary celebration. All current contracts are being reviewed for breach clauses and potential damages. A revised invoice will follow. We expect a resolution within 72 hours. I stared at the screen, then laughed out loud. This wasn't just about brunch anymore. It was about control, entitlement, pride wounded by an unexpected boundary. I wrote back a single sentence. You may direct any legal concerns to my estate attorney, Marcus Cooper. I'll be copying him here. Then I copied Marcus and pressed send. The next morning, Ethan showed up again. He didn't knock. The doorbell rang once. Then the handle jiggled. Then the unmistakable sound of the spare key being used. He walked in like he owned the place, which was fitting since that's exactly what this was about. Mom, he said, breathless with frustration. We need to talk. I folded my newspaper slowly. You're always welcome to talk, Ethan. Preferably with respect. He ignored the jab. Sienna's furious. She's saying we're going to have to cancel the whole thing. We've already invited over 50 people. This is a PR nightmare.
Do you understand that?
Did I invite those people? No, but did I approve the event? No, but we assumed. There's the issue, I said. You assumed. Again. He looked like he wanted to scream, but years of courtroom training had taught him restraint. Barely. You're punishing us.
No.
I'm protecting myself. He rubbed his temples. You're making a scene, Mom. This doesn't look good. Looks haven't concerned me in a long time, I said, rising. But if you want to talk about optics, let's talk about how it looks when your daughter-in-law treats the woman funding her life like an inconvenience. That stopped him. And how it looks, I continued, when your wife uses your mother's money to elevate her brand but forgets to invite her to the photo shoot. His mouth dropped open. What photo shoot?
Ah. So he didn't know.
I walked over to my bookshelf, pulled out the latest issue of Aspire, a lifestyle magazine. Flipped to page 22. There it was, a 4-page spread on the next queen of brunch featuring my dining room, my china, my garden, and not a single mention of me. Just Sienna, in a white linen dress, barefoot and glowing, holding a teacup with her signature smirk. She used the house, he whispered, stunned. Without even asking? I handed him the magazine. She used my life, Ethan. That night, Marcus called. I've reviewed the documents, he said calmly. The joint account is, in fact, under your control entirely. Their threats hold no water. I assumed as much. I've also taken the liberty of reviewing the deed and household agreements. You're not only sole owner of the house, but you have the right to evict guests with 24 hours notice.
Would you like to exercise that?
My breath caught. The brunch. The property. Everything. They thought they owned me. They were wrong. Yes, I said. Let's draw up the papers. Marcus hesitated. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything in my life. The following morning, I taped a single sheet of paper to the front door. Notice of access revocation. Effective immediately. Ethan and Sienna Lane are no longer authorized to enter or host events on this property. All personal belongings may be collected under supervision, by appointment only. Signed, Eleanor Lane, owner and resident. Then I made a pot of coffee, just the way I liked it.
No cinnamon. No foam. No judgment.
And for the first time in years, I drank it hot. They arrived at 9:42 a.m., just as I expected they would. 3 hours early. Desperate to fix the optics, as Sienna would no doubt say. Ethan's BMW idled at the curb while Sienna stepped out in full glam, blowout, pearls, and a cream silk blouse that practically screamed, I'm the brand. She carried a clipboard, like she was walking into a boardroom or a war zone. I watched from the window, still in my robe, sipping the last of my coffee. No cinnamon today either. Just clarity. She reached the front steps first and stopped cold. Her eyes locked on the sign I'd taped to the door. She read it once, frowned, then read it again. Then she turned sharply and motioned to Ethan. He took his time getting out of the car. He always had, even as a boy, never running, never rushing. Always calculating. That hadn't changed. Mom, he called. Let's talk about this. I didn't move. Sienna pounded the door once. Then twice. Then 3 fast slaps, like she thought repetition would change the legal reality, now stapled to my siding. I know you're in there, Eleanor. The use of my full name told me everything I needed to know. By 10:15 a.m., she had sent 3 texts, 2 emails, and 1 voicemail. By 10:30, a delivery van arrived. 2 young men hopped out and tried to carry 6 folding chairs up the steps. I opened the door just wide enough to hand them the notice and shake my head. They left without protest. By 10:50, a woman in a headset and black jumpsuit marched up the path with a clipboard and a confused look. The brunch coordinator. I stepped outside just as she reached the porch. You must be Mrs. Lane, she asked. I am. I'm here for the Lane anniversary event. Sienna Lane Events hired me. Where would you like us to begin setting up? There's no event here today, I said plainly. Not anymore. She blinked. Sorry. I handed her a second printed notice. She read it slowly, mouth opening slightly.
This is wow.
She didn't mention this. I imagine she didn't.
She paused.
You're handling this with more grace than most people would. I smiled. That's the benefit of living long enough to stop caring what people think. She left. And this time, there was no van waiting. At 12:03 p.m., just as the first guests were supposed to start arriving, I got a call from an unknown number. I let it ring, then let it go to voicemail. 30 seconds later, Thomas called. Grandma, he said, they're scrambling. The caterers canceled.
So did the band.
Sienna's trying to move everything to their house, but it's chaos. Didn't she send out the invites with my address on them? Yup. I could hear the smirk in his voice. Guests are showing up confused. Some are already posting about it. Twitter's having a field day. I blinked. Twitter. He laughed. You're trending locally. #Brunchgate. By 12:30, my phone was blowing up. Some messages were passive-aggressive. Some were full-blown threats. But one made me pause. From Mia. Grandma, what's going on?
Just that.
No punctuation. No emojis. No sass. Just uncertainty. I hadn't realized how little I'd heard from her since this all began. She was 17, nearly an adult, but still caught in the crossfire of adults who'd stopped acting like it. I typed and retyped 3 different versions of a reply. I settled on, ask your parents. But know this, I still love you. Always will. At 1:10 p.m., I finally opened the door. They were standing on the porch like angry guests locked out of their own party. Sienna looked unrecognizable. Her hair was frizzing in the late morning heat. Her lipstick had bled into the corners of her mouth. Her blouse had a coffee stain I prayed was from her own spilled tantrum. You've ruined everything, she hissed. Everything. No, dear, I said. I just stopped paying for your illusion. You humiliated us. In front of everyone. You humiliated yourself. I simply enforced my boundaries. She turned to Ethan. Say something. He took a slow breath. Then turned to me. I wish you'd told me about the Aspire shoot. There it was. Not rage. Not denial. Just disappointment.
And not at me.
At her. I didn't know until yesterday, he continued. I had to find out from Marcus, not from my wife. Sienna froze. I didn't think it was a big deal, she said weakly. That's the problem, he replied. You didn't think. Later that night, I met Marcus at the bank. I'd called in advance. We sat in a glass-walled office while a notary processed a series of forms I'd prepared, revoking cosigners, reinforcing my solo authority, and finally, transferring the entire contents of the once joint account into a brand new account under my trust. Marcus looked over the paperwork with a nod. It's done, he said, sliding the final form across the table. I signed. The notary stamped it with a satisfying thwunk. My money was mine again. All of it. When I returned home, there was a package on the doorstep. No note. No sender. Inside, a designer box of artisanal coffee beans and a card with one line scrawled in ink. Better for your gut. I closed the box, smiled faintly, and dropped it directly into the trash. Then I poured myself a plain, strong cup of the old stuff. Bitter.
Black.
And just how I liked it. The morning after what social media had dubbed the brunch blowout, I opened my front door to find a neatly printed envelope on thick cardstock. No postage, no return address, hand-delivered. Inside was a 4-page document titled, Proposal for Amicable Resolution and Financial Reconciliation. Submitted by Ethan and Sienna Lane. My eyes skimmed the subheadings. Mutual respect moving forward. Family asset reallocation strategy. Revised hosting guidelines and event planning oversight. And finally, suggested financial remediation. Eleanor Lane to provide one-time reconciliation transfer of $85,000 to cover incurred brunch-related vendor expenses and reputational management costs. $85,000. To repair their reputation. I folded the letter in half, then again, until it could no longer be read, only felt. I slipped it into my paper shredder and listened to the faint, mechanical hum of delusion being reduced to strips. Then I did something even more decisive. I called my attorney. I want to establish a legal firewall, I told Marcus.
Something permanent.
Not just financial boundaries, personal ones too. You mean like an advance directive? Powers of attorney. All of it. I want full legal autonomy documented, notarized, and irrefutable before they try anything else. He didn't ask if I was sure. By now, he knew I was. Later that day, I got a message from Thomas.
Grandma.
They're panicking. I overheard Sienna telling Ethan that you've gone rogue, and she's gathering evidence. Whatever that means. I laughed, not out of humor, but out of sheer amazement. Evidence of what? That I refused to be bullied? That I declined to bankroll another Instagram fantasy? Let them try. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just standing up for myself. I was documenting it. That weekend, I invited Thomas over to help clean out the study. The room still held relics of James, his books, his globe, the leather chair no one else ever sat in. We dusted, sorted, and packed. Halfway through, Thomas pulled out a black binder labeled Letters That Matter. Inside were handwritten notes, some dating back decades, cards from James, old birthday messages from Ethan, crayon-drawn hearts from Mia when she was 5. Can I read one? Thomas asked. I nodded. He opened to a letter from Ethan, dated 1992. It read, Dear Mom, thank you for always making things feel safe. Even when the world outside feels too big, you make home feel like enough. Love. Ethan. Thomas set the letter down slowly. He used to be soft. So did I said. Sunday evening, the doorbell rang again. Sienna. This time, no clipboard.
No petals.
Just oversized sunglasses and a defeated slouch in her posture. I need to talk to you, she said flatly. I'm not interested in negotiations. It's not that. Her voice cracked slightly. I just need you to hear something. I crossed my arms, unmoving. I'm listening. She hesitated, then held up her phone. A paused video was on the screen. It's Mia, she said softly. She made this yesterday. I watched. The screen lit up with my granddaughter sitting on her bedroom floor, knees pulled to her chest, hair messy and unstyled for once. I don't know what's happening, she said into the camera. But I hate watching everyone tear each other apart. Grandma, if you see this, I'm sorry. For laughing at your coffee. I thought it was funny. But I think now maybe it wasn't. I blinked hard. Swallowed the sudden lump. She's been asking questions, Sienna whispered. About everything. About the money. About you. Good, I said. It's time she started getting answers. That night, I took out a blank card and wrote,
Mia.
You are not responsible for the choices of the adults around you, but you are responsible for the person you become. Let this chapter teach you something. Love should never come with conditions, and respect must be earned, no matter how old or young you are. I love you. Always. Grandma. I sealed the envelope and sent it with Thomas the next day. 2 days later, I received an email with the subject line, Legal rights to property access. From a firm I didn't recognize. Thinly veiled threats disguised as mediation options. Language like emotional duress, familial duty, and unjustified exclusion from marital property. Laughable, really. I forwarded it to Marcus with a 3-word note. Shut this down. He responded in 10 minutes flat. Already in motion. Also filing cease and desist for defamation. Their lawyer is green and reaching. Don't worry. I didn't. Because for the first time in decades, I wasn't the one reaching. They were. And they were coming up empty-handed. The next morning, I made myself coffee the way James used to like it. Strong. Simple.
No nonsense.
As I stirred in a splash of cream, I realized something. I wasn't angry anymore. Not at Ethan. Not even at Sienna. I was awake. And once you wake up, you don't go back to sleep in someone else's story. It was only a matter of time before they tried to turn my clarity into confusion. The whispers had started. I first heard it from my neighbor, Mrs. Wilkes, whose driveway conveniently intersects with mine. I ran into Sienna yesterday, she said while trimming her rose bushes. She asked if I'd noticed anything different about you lately. Said you seemed forgetful. Withdrawn. I smiled gently. If by withdrawn she means I stopped paying for her floral arrangements, then yes, I suppose I have changed. Mrs. Wilkes laughed but leaned in closer. She also asked who your doctor was. Just thought you should know.
Ah,
There it was. When manipulation doesn't work, discrediting comes next. That night, I pulled out the medical report Dr. Matthews had printed for me just last month. Blood pressure, stable. Cognitive tests, all green. His personal notes scribbled at the bottom still made me smile. Sharp as a tack. More than I can say for some of your relatives. I scanned the pages into a PDF and emailed them to Marcus with a subject line that read, "Insurance against gaslighting." He replied 5 minutes later. "This goes in the folder. Smart move. We're building a beautiful wall of documentation here." By Wednesday, I received a voicemail from Ethan. "Mom, we're worried. You've made some rash choices lately, and frankly, we're concerned for your well-being. Let's talk soon, okay?" I didn't call back. Instead, I made an appointment with a certified eldercare psychologist and requested a full wellness assessment. Not because I needed to prove anything, but because I knew they'd try to claim I did. I would not let them twist my strength into weakness. Not this time. Thursday evening, Thomas stopped by with Chinese takeout and that familiar, uncertain look. He set the bag on the counter and said, "They're planning something." I didn't ask who they were. I already knew. "Sienna told me that you've gone off the deep end, that you're hoarding money, that you might be manipulated by someone." He hesitated, and she mentioned Marcus by name. So now they were trying to paint my lawyer, James's lawyer, as a predator. The audacity would have amused me if it weren't so grotesque. "I'm sorry, Grandma," Thomas said. "I just figured you should know." I poured him tea. "Thomas, do you know what my mother used to say when someone tried to rewrite her reality?" "What?" She'd say, "Let them talk. I'm too busy living my truth to correct their fiction." The following Monday, I sat in Dr. Caroline Lister's office. Oak bookshelves, soft lighting, and the smell of chamomile steeped gently in the background. She was everything I hoped she'd be. Warm, no nonsense, and clearly impossible to manipulate. She reviewed my chart, asked me about my history, and then unexpectedly leaned back and smiled. "I've read the background your lawyer sent. And I've read your medical reports. Would you like to know my professional opinion?" I nodded. "You're not just competent. You're remarkable. A case study in clarity under pressure. I wish more women your age came in before being forced to." "Thank you," I said. And I meant it. "Do you want me to write a formal letter of cognitive soundness?" "Yes," I replied. "And make it notarized. I'd like to frame it, in case anyone tries to tell me what I'm thinking." She chuckled. "You're delightful." The next day, Marcus called me just after lunch. "I've filed the documentation. Every time they push, we push back, calmly, legally, and with receipts." He paused, then added, "They'll realize soon they've lost control. The question is, what will they do when they accept that?" I didn't have to wait long for the answer. That Saturday, as I returned from the farmer's market with a basket of apples and fresh lavender, I found Sienna sitting on my porch. Uninvited, unannounced, and unusually quiet. She stood when she saw me. "I'm not here to argue," she said quickly. Look, I need to say something." I unlocked the front door without responding, set my basket inside, and left the door open just enough for her to follow.
she did.
In the kitchen, I poured us each a glass of water.
No tea.
No coffee. No hospitality beyond civility. "I shouldn't have said those things about you," she began. "About your mind. That wasn't fair. You didn't just say them, Sienna.
You seeded them.
You planted them where you hoped they'd grow into legal leverage." Her eyes darted to the floor. I was scared. Of what? Losing access to money you didn't earn? Or being held accountable for the way you treat people? She flinched but didn't deny it. "Ethan's talking about petitioning for guardianship," she said quietly. "Not because he wants to, but because he's desperate. We're not in a good place financially. So, your solution is to label me incompetent and seize control of my estate?" She swallowed hard. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. I let the silence sit between us. It was the first time I'd ever seen her look small. Do you want to know what scares me, Sienna? I said finally. She nodded. That I allowed this to go on for so long. That I said yes when I should have said no. That I raised a son who believes love must be earned by submission. Her eyes filled.
I'm sorry.
I studied her carefully. Are you sorry it happened, or sorry you lost control? I don't know, she whispered. Maybe both. As she stood to leave, she looked at the framed certificate from Dr. Lister sitting on my entryway table. Clear, formal, undeniable. You're not the one who's lost it, she said, almost to herself.
No, Sienna.
I finally found it. Found what? My voice. That night, I received a text from Mia. I read your letter. I cried. Thank you. I responded simply. You are not broken. You are becoming. Let that matter more than anyone's approval. She sent back a heart emoji.
No filter.
No hashtags. Just a moment between us, authentic, undistorted. The next morning, I stood in front of the mirror and barely recognized the woman looking back at me. Not because I looked older, but because, for the first time in years, I didn't look diminished. No one was siphoning my energy,
My time.
my worth. I wasn't bracing for another decision made without me. I wasn't apologizing for my boundaries or defending my dignity. I was just me, and that was enough. Later that afternoon, Marcus called again. Just a heads up, he said. Their lawyer submitted a petition for exploratory guardianship, but don't panic. I've already filed a formal opposition with your doctor's reports and cognitive assessments attached. I didn't panic. I poured myself a glass of water, sat down at the kitchen table, and reread the letter from Dr. Lister. I traced the embossed notary seal with my thumb and felt strangely proud, like a student passing an exam that no one had believed she could take. They're desperate, Marcus continued. The brunch fallout made Sienna look irresponsible. Ethan's firm is asking questions about his behavior. They've got one strategy left: make you the problem. Then they'll lose again, I said calmly. Because I'm not the problem. I'm the proof. The proof of what? That people can reclaim what's theirs, quietly, clearly, and without asking permission. He chuckled. You always were my favorite client, Eleanor. I'm your only client who sends lemon bars to your office every Christmas. Exactly. That evening, as I read in the sunroom, Thomas texted again. Want company? 5 minutes later, he was on my porch, his usual brown messenger bag slung across his shoulder, a lopsided grin on his face, and a framed print in his hand. I took this last week, he said, holding it out. Thought it belonged here. It was a black and white photo of my front porch. The door slightly ajar, light pouring through, an empty rocking chair in focus, soft shadows stretching into the frame. You made this house look like a sanctuary, I whispered. You made it a sanctuary, he said. I just captured it. We hung it in the hallway together. It looked right there, like a quiet boundary with a soul. Dad's spiraling, Thomas said as we finished our tea. He's not used to losing control, especially not like this. Is he drinking again? I think so. I nodded slowly, a familiar weight settling in my chest. Ethan had struggled in his early 30s after a business deal fell apart after James passed. Back then, I'd caught him pouring vodka into a water bottle and drinking it between job interviews. I'd cleaned up after him, hid it from Sienna, from Mia, from everyone. I don't think he ever forgave me for helping instead of exposing. Or maybe he never forgave me for seeing it at all. The next morning, I opened a letter from the county probate court. A formal notice that the guardianship hearing had been scheduled for the following week. My heart skipped, but not from fear. From certainty. This was it. The confrontation they'd been building toward. I called Marcus immediately. We'll go in prepared, he said. It'll be public record, which means if they push this, they'll also reveal just how stable and sharp you truly are. Good, I said. Let the record show I'm not the fragile one here. The night before the hearing, I did something I hadn't done in over a year. I wrote in my journal, September 22nd. Tomorrow, I walk into a courtroom not to defend myself, but to define myself. I've let too many people write my story. I'm taking back the pen. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Quiet. No gallery, no press. Just the judge, a clerk, Marcus, and across the aisle, Ethan, Sienna, and their exhausted-looking lawyer. I wore a navy dress and James's favorite brooch.
Pearls.
A calm smile. The judge reviewed the file slowly, then turned to me. "Mrs. Lane," she said, "do you understand why this hearing has been called?" "Yes, Your Honor," I said clearly. "Because I said no." There was a brief pause. Even the clerk looked up. I continued. "Because I declined to fund a private event I never agreed to. Because I revoked access to my personal finances after years of silent misuse. And because I established legal boundaries that my son and his wife didn't like." Ethan shifted uncomfortably. Sienna stared at her lap. I gestured calmly toward the thick folder Marcus had brought. "In there, Your Honor, you'll find notarized statements from my physician, my psychologist, and 3 neighbors who've known me for decades. You'll also find a log of my finances and proof of my continued independence, including the recent sale of a rental property I negotiated myself." The judge nodded. "Thank you. And do you feel coerced or manipulated in any way?"
No, ma'am.
"Unless you count being dragged into this courtroom as coercion." A dry chuckle from the judge. "Noted." 15 minutes later, the petition was denied. "Mrs. Lane," the judge said gently, "you are, by every measure, fully competent. Your records are clear. Your choices, though perhaps inconvenient to your family, are entirely your right to make." Then she turned to Ethan. "Mr. Lane, consider this a cautionary note. Elder guardianship is a tool meant to protect, not to control. I suggest you and your wife reflect on the difference." Gavel down. Game over. As I walked out, I didn't look back. I didn't need to see their faces to know what they were feeling. I knew. I'd felt it myself once, long ago, when I realized the person I underestimated had already made up their mind. Power doesn't have to shout. Sometimes it just walks away, holding its own hand. The house was still when I returned from the courthouse.
No ringing phones.
No scolding texts. No pounding fists on the door. Just the hum of the refrigerator, the distant call of a mourning dove outside, and the slow, steady rhythm of my own breath. For the first time in months, maybe years, the silence didn't feel like absence. It felt like peace. Not the kind you beg for. The kind you earn. Marcus called that evening, his voice lighter than usual. "You were extraordinary today, Eleanor." "I was honest," I said. "Exactly." He paused. "I hope you understand this wasn't just a win in court. It was a message. Loud and clear." "Oh, they heard it. Will they listen?" I looked out the window at the same driveway where Ethan used to learn how to ride his bike, wobbling and grinning at me like the world was new. I'm not sure they know how to listen anymore. The next day, a card arrived in the mail. Not typed. Not emailed. Handwritten. From Mia.
Grandma.
"They told me you were unstable. But you looked more stable in that courtroom than they've ever been in their lives. I'm proud of you. Love."
Mia.
Inside the card was a small photo, one I hadn't seen before. A candid snapshot of us at the beach when she was 9. Her tiny hand in mine. Windblown.
Smiling.
Entirely unposed. I held it for a long time. And for the first time since James died, I cried without sadness. Later that week, Thomas came by again, this time with a file folder in hand. "Thought you'd want to see this," he said, dropping onto the porch swing beside me. Inside were printouts from Ethan's firm, apparently leaked by someone who didn't appreciate his recent performance. A report titled, "Lane Family Internal Conflict and Client Impact Risk." Highlights included unethical pursuit of parental guardianship without legal merit, conflict of interest with firm values and elder care initiatives. Recommendation: voluntary resignation or reassignment. I exhaled, not with triumph, but with tired, quiet knowing. This could ruin his career, I said softly. "I think," Thomas said, "he already did that part himself." The next morning, Sienna returned. No clipboard this time. No apology rehearsed. She stood on the porch holding a plain brown envelope. I know you probably never want to see me again, she said, but I need to give this to you. Inside the envelope were receipts, dozens of them. Labeled, categorized, even color-coded. Spa treatments. Brunch planning expenses. Home decor she'd charged to my account. Luxury items she hadn't even bothered to unwrap. I wanted you to see what I did, she said. All of it. It's disgusting.
I'm sorry.
I didn't answer right away. Sienna didn't try to fill the silence. She just stood there, vulnerable and, for once, unarmed. I've started therapy, she finally said. Real therapy. Not just kale smoothies and affirmation podcasts. I nodded slowly. That's a beginning. I'm not asking for anything, she added quickly. Not forgiveness. Not money. Not even contact. I wanted you to know I see it now. The damage. And that I'm trying. I studied her face. It was thinner than before. Tired. But stripped of performance. You hurt me, I said.
Deeply.
I know. But if you're finally telling the truth, then that's the first thing we've had in common in a long time. That night, I set the receipts aside and wrote another letter. To myself. Dear Eleanor, you made it through the kind of fire that doesn't leave ashes, but scars you in places no one else can see. You stopped being everyone's doormat, their checkbook, their silent accomplice. You spoke when they told you to stay quiet. You stood when they tried to sit you down. You didn't just reclaim your bank account. You reclaimed your name.
E.
I folded the letter and placed it inside James's old cigar box, beside our wedding photo and the key to the safe deposit box. A time capsule of reclamation. On Sunday, Mia showed up on her own. She didn't text first. She didn't knock. She just walked into the kitchen like she used to when she was little. I made something, she said, holding out a ceramic mug. I didn't have money for a real gift, so I made this in art class. The mug was lopsided, glazed in lavender and gold. The words etched on the side were simple. I see you, Grandma. I held it in both hands like it was bone china. I see you too, sweetheart. We didn't cry. We didn't hug. We just sat together at the table, drinking tea from mismatched mugs, in a house where nothing had been broken, except the silence. Autumn crept in like a secret. The maple tree outside my bedroom window had begun to flame red, each leaf a soft rebellion against the summer that refused to last. The mornings were cooler now, crisper, cleaner. And somehow so was I. Not lighter, exactly. Just more awake. The following Monday, I received a letter in the mail. Not a typed email. Not a voice note. An actual handwritten letter with blue ink on thick stationery. It was from Ethan.
Mom.
I've resigned from the firm. They gave me the option to walk away or be escorted out, and I chose the quieter route. I've been trying to understand how I got here, how I became someone who could look at his own mother as a liability instead of a person. Truth is, I don't know when I stopped seeing you clearly. You didn't change, Mom. You just stopped accommodating my blindness.
I'm sorry.
For the control, the entitlement, the silence. I don't expect a response. But I hope one day you'll let me try again.
Ethan.
I read it twice. Then a third time. And still I didn't cry. Because what he'd written wasn't healing. It was truth. And truth didn't always need applause. Later that evening, Thomas came over with a USB stick and a grin on his face. I made you something, he said. He plugged it into the TV and clicked play. A short film, just over 5 minutes long. Footage of my garden. Sunlight glinting through leaves. My hands planting bulbs. Close-ups of my face as I read at the kitchen table. Laughed with Mia, stirred tea with my knobby fingers.
Nonerashchen.
Just music. And movement. At the end, the title faded in. The Power of Staying. I looked at Thomas, tears catching me by surprise. Why that title? He shrugged, suddenly shy. Because you didn't leave. You didn't run. You stayed. With yourself. With your truth. Even when no one else did. I reached for his hand. And for the first time in months, I felt safe enough to let someone hold mine. That Friday, Sienna called again. Not to manipulate, not to grovel, just to talk. I've signed over my rights to the business, she said. Sienna Lane Events is done. I'm starting fresh. Probably in a smaller way. Something real this time. That's wise, I said gently. I'm working with a nonprofit now, she continued, helping elderly women who've been financially exploited. It feels honest. I let the silence stretch before replying. Good, I said. Maybe this time, your success can come from substance, not strategy.
She didn't argue.
She didn't perform. She just breathed. And in that breath, I sensed something new in her, a weight she'd finally decided to carry on her own. Mia stopped by that Sunday with an unexpected question. Grandma, can I live with you next summer? I blinked. What? I've been thinking about taking a break from college. Maybe working here. Getting to know you better, outside of the family chaos. It took me a long time to respond, because I had spent so long preparing to be done with mothering, with managing, with being everyone's emotional support beam. But this was different. This wasn't obligation. This was invitation. Of course you can, I said. That night, I opened a new bank account. This one in Mia's name. Not with a large sum. Just enough to begin building a foundation of her own. It came with a letter. Mia, this is not payment. It's not inheritance. It's a bridge to the kind of woman I believe you're becoming. Use it to build something real. Something you can stand on when the world tries to shrink you. Grandma. I placed the letter in the drawer with the ceramic mug she made me, next to the old receipts, beside the restored photo of us on the beach. A small archive of moments that mattered more than money ever could. The next morning, I did something simple. I went to the farmer's market alone, bought fresh apples, watched an elderly couple slow dancing to a violinist near the herb stall. I sat on a bench and ate a Honeycrisp like it was the first time I'd ever tasted one. No one interrupted. No one called. No one asked for anything. And for once, I didn't feel empty from the stillness. I felt complete. Back home, I updated my will. Not because I was afraid, but because I was clear. Mia would inherit the house, the savings, and the rest. Not Ethan. Not Sienna. Not the legacy of entitlement. And most importantly, she'd inherit the full story. I included a letter with a legal packet. The strongest woman I've ever known was my grandmother. She taught me how to thread a needle, speak with purpose, and leave a room when respect left first. She passed a diamond to my mother, but she passed her spine to me. This house is yours now, Mia. But so is the story that built it. Tell it honestly, even the parts that still sting, especially those. That night, I sat in the porch swing alone, the mug she made me resting in my lap. The stars came out one by one, and somewhere inside my bones, I felt James's quiet pride like a tide coming in. I had not just protected what was mine. I had preserved who I was. And in doing so, I had given the next generation something they didn't even know they needed. Permission. To break the pattern. To speak before they're silenced. To stay when everyone else expects them to disappear. The probate ruling had been filed. The bank account secured. The house title formally amended to reflect the new trust. Every signature had dried in ink and intention. It was done. But I knew better than to think a battle's end was the same as peace. Because family wounds don't heal on paper. They only begin to scar when people stop defending the harm they caused and start acknowledging it out loud. So when Ethan called the following Thursday morning and asked, quietly, "Can we meet?" I didn't hang up. I just asked, "Are you ready to listen?" There was a pause. Then, "I think I already am." We met at the park near the harbor, where the wind always seemed to carry away the words that were too heavy to keep indoors. He arrived in jeans and an old college sweatshirt, not the polished suits that had once made him look like a stranger. I sat on a bench near the water, sipping coffee from a plain thermos. He didn't bring one. He sat beside me without a word for almost a full minute, just breathing. "I read your will," he said finally. "The version you filed with the court." I nodded. "It was fair," he added. Maybe more than I deserved. Another pause. I thought you'd be angrier. I was, I said calmly. I still am. But anger is loud. I've chosen power instead. He swallowed hard. Sienna's been going to therapy every week. I've started too. Different therapists, obviously. That's wise. He exhaled like someone confessing a sin. I've been in debt so long, I stopped recognizing what I owed people emotionally. That's called bankruptcy of the soul, I said. Takes longer to file, but it leaves a deeper mark. He looked at me then, fully, not just as a mother, not as an adversary, but as a person. You always warned me I'd forget where I came from if I got too busy chasing where I was going. I tilted my head. And what did you say back then? That I knew better. And did you?
No, he said.
I didn't. We sat in silence for another moment. Then he pulled a small item from his coat pocket. A photo of me and James on the back deck, holding baby Mia in our arms. James is mid-laugh. I'm smiling down at her. Mia's fists are clenched, her face red with protest. I found this in a shoebox, he said. After I moved out of the house. After Sienna and I paused things. You've separated? He nodded. She asked for space. And I didn't argue. We needed it. He handed me the photo. I was hoping you'd keep it. I think you've earned the right to remember what mattered before all this. I traced the edges of the photo, then folded it carefully and slid it into my coat. You're still my son, I said quietly. I don't expect forgiveness. I'm not offering it, I replied. Not yet, but I'm offering something harder. What's that? A second chance. That night, I got a knock on the door just after 8. It was Sienna. No makeup. Hair pulled into a loose bun. Holding a pie in both hands like it might shatter if she breathed wrong. I baked, she said. It's not great, but it's real. I didn't order it. Didn't stage it. Just followed a recipe from scratch. I stood aside, letting her in without a word. She placed the pie on the counter, then took a deep breath. I'm not here to ask for anything. Not a relationship. Not redemption. I just needed you to see I can do one thing with my own 2 hands. I sliced 2 pieces and handed her one. We ate in silence. It was overly sweet, slightly burnt on the crust. But it was hers. And that meant more than perfection ever could. After she left, I found Mia sitting on the porch swing, scrolling her phone. I saw Dad's post, she said. The one about starting over. He posted about it? She smirked. Welcome to the modern world, Grandma. Public apologies are a genre now. We both laughed. Do you think he means it? She asked. Meaning doesn't live in what people say, I replied. It lives in what they sustain. She tucked her legs beneath her and looked at me seriously. Do you think our family can ever be good again? I didn't answer right away. Instead, I reached into the drawer beside me and handed her a folded paper. It was the letter I'd written to myself weeks ago, after the guardianship hearing. She read it slowly. When she reached the end, she whispered, "Break the pattern." That's the hope, I said. And hope only works if someone's willing to go first. She folded the letter and handed it back, then let me go second. The next day, she brought over a blank journal and placed it on the kitchen table. I want to document everything, she said. The truth. The ugly. The turning points. Why? So no one forgets how easy it is to stop seeing people, and how hard it is to start seeing them again. I opened the journal and wrote the first line. It began with coffee and ended with clarity. Mia smiled. I think that's the title. 1 year later, the house smelled like cinnamon and cardamom again. The same way it used to when James and I would host fall brunches, our grandkids running barefoot across the patio, napkins flying like birds in the wind, laughter spilling over the stone wall that separated our property from the edge of the world. But this year was different. This year, they had all come because I'd said no. Ethan arrived first. He carried 2 folding chairs and a casserole dish that looked like it had actually been made at home. He wore jeans again, just like that day in the park, but this time with purpose. I wasn't sure if I should bring anything, he said, setting the dish down carefully on the counter. So, I brought the only thing I'm good at making. Your apology last fall was already plenty, I replied. But if this has cheese in it, you may just earn a third chance. He smiled, sheepish and grateful. One thing was clear. He was still rebuilding. But now he was doing it brick by brick instead of smoke and mirrors. Sienna came next. No fanfare. Just a simple wool coat and a homemade cranberry tart in her hands. I Googled 3 recipes before I gave up and called Judith, she confessed. She still gives out my mother's old measurements in ounces and instinct, I replied. You were doomed from the start. We shared a laugh, and I saw, for the first time in ages, that her laugh wasn't covering anything anymore. No shame. No spin. Just simplicity. I don't need you to like me, she said as we stood side by side in the kitchen. But I hope one day we'll be able to sit in the same room and not feel the weight of all the things we never said. I placed 2 mugs of tea on the table and handed her one. We're already doing that, Sienna. Thomas arrived last, right behind Mia, holding a small wooden box and a proud grin. This is from both of us, he said. Something we've been working on together. Inside was a small photo album. The cover said, "The year we reclaimed the story." Each page was filled with photos taken since last fall. Mia and I planting a garden. Ethan visiting with a bag of groceries and humble eyes. Sienna helping serve food at a community shelter. A printed screenshot of the nonprofit she'd helped fund for financial abuse survivors. A black and white photo of me on the porch swing, wrapped in a blanket, eyes closed, the caption underneath reading, "Peace looks like her." We sat around the dining room table, my table, sharing food that had been made with effort, not expectation. No one checked their phones. No one took selfies. No one bragged about upcoming vacations or startup investments. We just talked, laughed, paused without panic. Mia tapped her glass lightly with her spoon and said, "Can I read something?" Everyone turned to her. She pulled a folded piece of paper from her back pocket. "I found this in the back of Grandma's desk drawer," she said. "It's dated 5 years ago. A letter." I asked if I could read it aloud. I nodded. "To whomever inherits my silence. There may come a day when you find yourself holding power disguised as a gift. A house. A check. A title. If that happens, ask yourself, is this a blessing or a bribe to forget what mattered?" I spent years being kind at my own expense, mistaking passivity for grace. But grace doesn't ask you to disappear. It asks you to show up with your full self, even if your voice shakes. If you're reading this, it means I learned that in time. And I hope you do too. Eleanor Lane. The room was quiet for a long moment. Then Ethan stood up, raised his glass. To showing up. We all followed. To showing up, we echoed. Later that night, after everyone had gone, Mia stayed behind to help me tidy up. She was taller now, wiser, less afraid of silence. I handed her a small, velvet box. "This was meant to be your mother's," I said. But she threw it away before she even knew what was inside. Mia opened it slowly. Inside, nestled in navy satin, was a silver locket. Simple, elegant, with the faintest etching of a wave cresting over a sun. She opened it. Inside, the diamond. My grandmother's. The one I'd sewn into the knitted doll all those months ago. The one that had once been discarded without a second glance. "You kept it," she whispered. I did. "And now, I'm giving it to someone who sees things clearly." Her eyes welled. "I don't deserve this." "It's not about deserving," I said. "It's about honoring. You honored my story. And now, it's part of yours." As she left, she turned at the door. "Grandma?" "Yes. Next year, can we host again? Here?" I smiled. "Yes, Mia. We can." That night, I sat alone in the sunroom. The stars out. The mug she made me in my hands. And I realized something simple, something profound. I had been so afraid of losing my family that I almost forgot how to rebuild it. Not through control. Not through sacrifice. But through truth. Boundaries. And one brave decision at a time. This isn't just a story about revenge. It's a story about recovery, about legacy, about refusing to shrink for comfort, and daring to take up space in a world that asks women to age quietly, disappear politely, and hand over their power without a sound. Not me. Not anymore. My name is Eleanor Lane, and I did not lose my family. I taught them how to find me. If this story moved you like it moved me, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment below sharing where you're watching from, and stay tuned for more powerful stories just like this one.